I think it's quite a nice, it's interesting to do partner meetings online. We get more people participating it's from the comfort of their homes, but it's nice. It's okay. So today we have two lovely people who have joined us. I really wouldn't want to formally introduce them because there is no real formal introduction I can give for them. But two lovely people who we all know quite well by now. Rati, would you like to say something about them?
Yes. Are you going to do the update first?
I will.
The flow.
Okay. I would, but I just thought that we'll just say something about them and then we could do the update.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening. And thank you for joining our June partner meeting. We are so delighted to have really two inspiring heroes who have joined us for our meeting today. I think, shall I go ahead and just do a little bit of formal introduction and then I'll hand back to Parul. And then Rachna is going to actually do a casual interview with them and take us through the next hour. So I will start with Khushru. Khushru is 53 years old, and actually I don't know whether I needed to say that. He works with the Central Railways, and Khushru has this very, very unique organization called Seva Kitchen. He's the founder of Seva Kitchen. He will tell us more about it, but it is a campaign actually for where people who want to help donate money to giving food out to others. And I will let Khushru tell us more, but it's really not an NGO in the true sense of the word, but it has had such an amazing impact, especially during these challenging times that people have faced. Khushru has also initiated a massive blood donation drive in 2000 through a portal called IndianBloodDonors.com. And Khushru is based in Nagpur, and we are so delighted to have you on our call. Thank you for joining us. And next, I want to introduce my old friend, Matthew. Matthew is the CEO of CYDA. It was one of the first organizations that Forbes Marshall partnered with. I can't even remember how long ago, but I have learned so much working with Matthew and his team.
2004.
Okay, he went away to Indore in between, and we kind of lost touch, but CYDA continued to be a very strong partner organization of our foundation. Matthew has done his MA and MPhil from Pune University, worked for 10 years with YUVA, which is Youth for Unity and Voluntary Action. And after, in 1999, he set up CYDA, which is Center for Youth Development and Activities in Pune. It works with adolescents and young people, but I think what is unique is that it engages young people or youth during disasters and emergencies, and that is a core focus of CYDA's work. CYDA has been very active through any kind of disaster that we've had in our country. The Gujarat earthquake in 2001, the tsunami, the Maharashtra floods, and of course the response most recently to the COVID crisis. We are really delighted to have really both you superheroes with us today. Thank you very much for joining us. And I will turn it over to Parul for a quick update of our chapter over the last month and the activities, and then over to Rachna for just to interview them. Thank you. Parul.
Unmute.
Sorry, I'm just going to do a screen here. 1 second. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yes.
But your audio is very bad, Parul.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Today is some problem. I have no idea. Okay. Is it any better?
Yeah.
Now
much
it's
better. Much better.
Okay. So just a quick update. This is just like a recap of what we've been doing through the month. We've just concluded a lead partner meeting, which was like basically getting all the lead partners together to really understand what work has been going on the ground. And we've been talking to every organization one-on-one to understand what their plans are for post the situation that we have all faced, and what are they going to do? Are they going to make any programmatic changes? Are they going to make any financial changes to the program? What is the support that they need from us? All these conversations one-on-one have been happening. So we got all the lead partners together to talk about what they feel about the organizations that they are working with, and going forward, how do we take this relationship ahead with each one of them. So that's something that we concluded. We also did a partner induction. We've had some new partners who've joined us over a period of last 2 to 3 months, and we got them together. Some of them are on the call right now, and we got them together to just explain SVP much better, because in normal circumstances, I could have actually taken them to all our NGOs, shown them everything, made them understand things better. But of course, that couldn't happen. So we had a nice conversation where we discussed what SVP Pune is doing, what SVP India is doing, and what SVP globally does. So that was a very interesting session with all of them. We also did a little session with some interested people in Nagpur. And that was about introducing SVP to them, because one of the thoughts we also had at the SVP Pune chapter was that how do we really grow SVP? So we did a little session with about 8 to 10 people, and to just introduce what we do. And so that was one. And actually, that's where we actually first spoke to Khushru. And then this whole idea struck that we should call him to speak to all our partners. So that happened. Then we concluded our management council meeting. One of the themes that actually came about was reimagining SVP post-COVID, actually. So there was a conversation around what SVP should be doing, how we should look like, etc. And more on that will come about over the next few months. And I think in September, we will see much more conversation around that. So that has happened. Then I would like to thank Rohinton, who was on the call with us. He's actually agreed to become the new review committee chair. And really thank you to him, because this is a tough role given the situation that we are in. Lot of plans are changing, lot of work on the ground is stalled. So it's not going to be easy to actually do a review in this kind of a situation. There are only two options. Either you don't do a review and you say, okay, let's just wait, and when things are better, we kind of talk to NGOs, or we actually sit with each one of them and say, what is your plan of action now? How are you going to change? And what changes are you going to make? Are you going to make any? And if you're not, have you thought about them? And, what about the money that we are giving? How do we want to give it? And things like those. So it's a tough job for him, but thanks to him, he's taken it up. And we are actually going to look at having 2 more members join us for the team. It's open. So please, whoever raises their hand, I mean, if you don't, then eventually we will get you in. But raise your hands if you want to join in. We're also evaluating a few proposals. This year, we have a few themes that we are working around. One is to do work in rural Maharashtra. Interestingly, earlier we all had conversations around this, and we felt that we can't work in rural Maharashtra. It's too far for people to go, etc., etc. But I think COVID has taught us how to kind of get that out of our way. All of us have worked online. All of us have been doing everything online. So I think it's a good place to start doing something in rural Maharashtra. And definitely we don't really need to visit those places very often. We can do it online for sure. Then there is also a thought of supporting one of the artisans community. It's called Creative Dignity. These are just options that we have. We can look at more options. We are exploring if anything comes our way, which is really good. So Creative Dignity is one, which is supporting the artisan community. Then we just actually talking to KKPKP, which is Kagaj Ka Patrika and something. Honestly, I don't know. I just know it's KKPKP. But so we have been talking to them about two models that they have for the Waste Pickers Livelihood Program. The 2 models, they have a thrift shop and a scrap shop. Both are doing well. They have 20 scrap shops across Pune, and they have about 3 thrift shops in Pune, and they really want to scale this. Each shop provides direct employment and indirect employment to waste pickers, and it's doing pretty well. So We're just kind of evaluating these models. Then there is a conversation with Lender Hand also going on. It's purely on an internship model, and this is purely going to be capacity building, at least this part of it. So yeah, these are a few conversations that we have had with the NGOs. So yeah, so that's some recap that we had. What? One second. Okay. Welcoming new partners. Nidhi is on the call. Sharmila is also on the call. So we would like to welcome Nidhi and Sharmila and Jivika. Jivika, we know, some of us know that she works with Dasra, and I've actually asked her to join our review committee. Good for us. We will get a lot of knowledge from her too. So yeah, welcome Nidhi, welcome Sharmila and Jivika. So then what's coming up for us? We have a lead partner training session coming up. We have NGO reviews that have been planned. So they are coming up. We have a session by Atma for resilience building for our NGOs. Thanks to Forbes Marshall. They are doing it. And Rati has actually allowed us to call our NGOs for that. So that's happening. The next partner meeting is July 21st, financial. So what are you going to see during that? You're going to see some discussions around financials. Our thought is to have some people talk to us around crowdfunding, but this is just a thought. We will think about this and come back to you better. Like we have Khushro and Matthew today. We are now thinking what next, who next do we call to talk to all of you. So a thought around crowdfunding, because we've seen a lot of crowdfunding that has happened recently during COVID. So we might have a session around that. What's also coming up is, please note, we will have our All India partner meeting on the 24th of September. We will have our SVP Regional India meet, that's on the 25th and 26th. Mind you, all of these are e-conferences. So it's a new thing for all of us. We're still in the planning stage, but we will come back to you with a better, detailed plan on what these are going to be and what can you expect from all of this. So that's it from me. I will now stop sharing, and I will now hand over the proceedings to Rachna. Rachna, please, can you now start the conversation?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Rati, for pushing me into this. I'm not very good with all this, but thank you for that. And Khushro and Matthew, really a pleasure to meet you. Not very happy to meet you virtually. I wish I would have got an opportunity to really meet you all in person. After reading your bio, it's really humbling to see the kind of work you all have been doing at the ground level and the grassroots level. And I do wish once things open up, I get a chance to personally visit and see what you all are doing. So for the interest of time, what we've done is we've just formulated a few questions, and we can just take it from there and probably at the end open up for the partners to ask a few questions. And maybe they can even put it in the chat box, Parul, so you could, please feel free to intervene if there's anything at all. So Matthew, I'm going to begin with you. And really a question to both of y'all, because y'all have been doing what y'all have been doing really for so many years wonderfully. And how did all this start for you, Matthew, this whole journey? You've been one of the founder members of CYDA, and you've been involved in other organizations before. But what got you into being a founder member for CYDA, starting CYDA? What was the initiative and how did it all get started, your journey?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this August group, and I'm thankful to SPP and as well as all the members. I consider that this is also a recognition of our work and giving an opportunity to speak in front of you. I have been working with young people in the country as late as 1989. During that time, in the country, the focus has been to promote volunteerism as well as to engage youth in many activities, social activities. So many of you know that, late 80s and early 90s, there were a lot of movements in the country. There was Narmada Bachao Andolan movement, women's movement, Chilka Bachao Andolan. I mean, what we used to do, our just after the college days, we used to encourage more youth to participate this kind of social and environmental movements. And over a period of 10 years of engagement with the youth, I realized that there is a problem youth are facing, and we need to address that. uh, during late 80s and early 90s, we always think that, youth is not a problematic. They are energetic, they are healthy, they have no issues. So, but I realized that in the future, in fact, I remember in 1998, there was a talk in Rajiv Gandhi Institute in Sri Perumbattur. World Bank had come. I said that we are going to face a human resource crisis in future. We will have a lot of educated youth, but we don't have skilled youth. And 1999, I said, and that has really resulted in coming out of the skill building and various programs later. Still, I look at a big challenge. So I felt that, okay, it is okay to engage youth in social work, but we need to also look into youth work, youth issues and youth problem. And that's why the focus Center for Youth Development. And then through youth, we develop the society. So our major focus has been to work with adolescents and young people. And in fact, I would say that probably we must have reached out to more than 500,000 youth in the country through various programs and various activities. In that, one major core activity we always see, we focus on remedial education, we focus on health, nutrition and water sanitation, hygiene, we focus on skill building and livelihood, but we also do youth participation in emergencies. We feel that youth need to get into emergencies so that in future, when such emergencies happen, they need to play a vital role. So that has been from the beginning itself. I am sure that almost 2,000 youth, we have encouraged them to be part of become, managing and supporters of various emergencies from 2000 so far.
Thank you so much, Matthew, I think that's the start of your journey and the start of our interview. So we'll go through that journey ahead. Kushu, what inspired you to start this journey of Seva Kitchen? It's not even a registered NGO, and you're completely doing Seva in the true sense. So what inspired you for that?
Thanks a lot. This is my second Zoom call. So please help me out if I go wrong somewhere.
You're doing a wonderful job.
So Seva Kitchen started in 2014. My mother was admitted to a hospital in Nagpur, Central India Institute of Medical Sciences. And she was slated for a brain surgery. She had cancer of the brain and it was detected in the last stage. So I was with her in the hospital for 20 days. And every day when I would get down to have tea or snack down below, I would see a lot of people who would come from villages. They would be putting 3 bricks and putting a tawa on it, and they would be making rotis on it. And they would eat that with either an onion or they would eat it with a green chili. So it affected me a lot. And one day I was quite glum with my mother in the ward. And my mother asked me that, Kushu, why are you sad? Is it because of my health? Why are you worried? Why do you look worried? And I told her, Mummy, it's been 20 days and I've been seeing patients who come from villages. They're so poor that they don't even have money to eat. They just need chapatis and they eat it with onion or a green chili. So my mother immediately reacted. She uttered 2 sentences. She said, Kushu, why don't you feed them? The people of the world will help you. And at that moment, I just nodded my head and I said, yes, I'll do something about it. And that was forgotten. In a few days, my mother was operated upon. She was discharged. We came back home. And in 6 months, my mother passed away. She passed away on the 3rd of October. And I told my wife, Furman, about the discussion I and my mom had in the hospital. And I told her that this is a promise which I will keep to her. I will start feeding patients in that hospital. So first I connected with a friend and I said, please, can you serve 25 meals on a Sunday in this hospital? And he readily agreed, and he started serving 25 meals. After 3 weeks, I went to the hospital with him, and I saw that when his man Friday would take 25 meals over there would be 150 people who would come running for those meals. So I said, nay, this won't do. So I and my wife set up a kitchen at our place. I, being a Parsi, I am very much, I know what goes into catering, because we have these gambars in our community. And I have been a volunteer in my gymkhana where I have been organizing dinners. So free of cost, of course. So I knew what went into catering and what it would cost. So we started cooking about meals for 200 people, I and my wife and my brothers. And we would go every Sunday. The hospital didn't allow us inside the hospital. So we would go outside the hospital and stand on a chai ka thela, that the tea kiosk. He would clean up the kiosk and keep it ready. And there we would serve meals to 200 people every Sunday. So this started growing. A lot of people, a lot of friends in Nagpur started noticing about it. And they would come in 3 to 4 months. A lot of people, a lot of volunteers joined me. And then they started giving me material. They would start coming and giving me money, which I refused. I realized if I would take the money and the material from them, I would just be at that particular hospital. I would never be able to spread my idea across. So I told them, no, I will not take your money. If you want to cook and serve, I will give you another hospital. And you cook over there and you serve over there. So we sort of started crowdsourcing. So we made groups of 10, 15 people, 10 to 15 people. We would give them a location. They would all cook meals at their places. They would pack it up in containers, in foil containers, which we get in the trains. And then they would distribute it. So this started growing from one hospital to two, second, third, fourth, and it went to Hyderabad. Somehow, the Better India did a story on us. And then it started spreading. Slowly, in 2016, I realized that the relatives of the patients were getting food, but the patients were not getting nutrition. If we are admitted in a hospital, our family members get milk, they'll get juices, they will get fruit. But what about the poor patients? They don't have access to any such thing. So I got an idea in 2016 in the same hospital where I started the first Seva. I thought of installing a fridge. Basically, not a fridge which we have. It's a visi-cooler which most ice cream parlors have. It's a see-through fridge. So we installed the first one over there and we called it the Neki Ka Pitara, the fridge of kindness. And then we made a group of people who would again not give money. We made a WhatsApp group of people where there is an admin from the hospital and there is an admin from the group. So the first person, a volunteer, he would fill up the fridge. He would fill it up with Amul Cool. He would fill it with Sofit, fruits, rare juices, Tropicana juices, chicky, bread, butter, whatever they could. And then every day, the fridge would be opened once or twice a day. And whatever the needy patients required, they would be given from the fridge. So the first fridge we installed on the 31st of December 2016. Now we have 21 fridges across the country. So we have 5 in Nagpur, we have 4 in Hyderabad, we have 3 fridges in the Satya Sai group of institutions who conduct free open heart surgeries for congenital heart defects in Nai Mumbai, Naya Raipur, and Palwal, Haryana. We have in about 5 to 6 cancer hospitals. We have in cancer palliative care centers who give free seva to terminally ill patients. And this is how the crux of our work was no money to be accepted anyway. Now you'll ask me, Kushru, how do you install these fridges? Even the fridges.
That was my next question. That how do you mobilize the whole thing, Kushru? It's amazing.
See, I'll tell you one thing. I believe in nature. Where there is a will, there is a way. Every fridge which has been installed, people tell me you take, this costs 40,000 rupees. We say no, we will not take. We find out a distributor in that location and we tell that person you deposit 40,000 in that distributor's account and that fridge is installed at whatever location or whatever hospital we want it to be done. And then we have a starter group. A starter group is, we have 4 ladies. They are from Hyderabad and one is in Jeddah, one is in America, who join the group and they start filling it till we get new donors who will fill it up. So you'll be surprised, many of our fridges, the donors are from Jeddah, Singapore, America, they're from different countries. And now you'll ask me, how do they fill up the fridges without giving money? So we use the services of Big Basket, Amazon, Flipkart. So the first rule at Seva Kitchen is no money. The second rule is no meetings. Sorry, we don't have any meetings. We have groups, we have WhatsApp groups where there is a dedicated person who runs that WhatsApp group and that person is in touch with me. And we run all our sevas without accepting money. And that is how we have grown. There is no registration of an NGO. There is no registration of any organization. We work through WhatsApp, we work through Facebook page, and of course my account. So many people who have joined us, the biggest example I'll give you, corporates say, show us this, show us that, we will do this, due diligence. The biggest example is Amita. Is Amita here?
Yes,
Yeah, Amita is here. Once I shared a picture of children. We also serve children in schools, small schools, underprivileged children with milk and nutritious products. So we have 2 schools and other 10 locations where we serve them with milk every day. So Amita, a picture I had shared on Facebook where children were dipping biscuits in water and eating them in Ahmedabad. So one of my friends, Venkat Krishnan, shared this picture on his wall, and Amita immediately connected with me and said, Kushru, I'll give you biscuits wherever you need. No emails, no proposals, nothing. So Dil Se, Seva Kitchen is all about Dil Se.
That's really, really beautiful, Kushru. I've honestly never in these last 15 years, I've heard of an organization that is just working without any registration, without any sort of, a formal group and without any money.
I'll tell you one more thing. I always believe in this. Once upon a time, years back when I started Indian Blood Donors, it's another story, which I can tell you some other day. I always wanted to do good. And, I always used to think, only if I was Mukesh Ambani, I would have such a lot of money and I would give such a lot. But that was not going to happen. So, my thoughts took me back. And, I started thinking about the saints of Lore, who we had. They never had revenue models. Mother Teresa, she never had a revenue model. When she needed help, she looked up. And that is what I do. When I need help, I look up. You'll be surprised. During the COVID, in these 3 months, can you take a guess of what amount we have raised to distribute kits to migrants and all people in Nagpur?
Yeah. But Kushu, I'm going to wait on that because I'm going to come back to that question because we want to know more in detail about the COVID.
Yes. Yes.
So Matthew, my next question to you is, and Kushu, that's really been truly inspiring. And Matthew, CYDA is running many programs. I know at the grassroots level, you all are doing phenomenal work. And you all have engaged a lot of youth in the entire disaster management program, whether it's been the earthquake, the floods, the tsunami. So how do you all do this? How do you mobilize the youth? How do you inspire them to come forward and actually take charge of such situations? And what are the programs that you all run?
One thing is that almost we have around 120 staff spread across 5 states. And the beauty is that almost 95% of the staff are below 30 years. So predominantly young people are part of our program because we are working with the youth. So, I mean, it is always better youth talking to the youth talking to the adolescents rather than, adult going and talking to them, because they will be able to relate much better. I mean, during this, always during the disaster, in fact, we are almost in the first, even during this COVID. And in fact, we were on the roads on 29th of March. Only that we planned from 25th, but we didn't get the permission to move out because we were waiting for the police permission to move out because the beginning. The moment we got the police permission, and because before we were on the road, in fact, we had a meeting with our executive members as well as the staff. The executive members had some apprehension regarding the safety and all those kind of issues, but then they finally say go ahead. And as far as the staff is concerned, they really said that there are problems in the slums, there are people who are hungry, we need to do something. And that's why we just started, because we knew that we were not equipped to contribute anything on the health and medical front. But what we can do is mobilize fund and provide ration to the people. And that's why we started a campaign called No One Shall Go Hungry. I mean, that campaign we picked up, we didn't have any money. We had a group of volunteers working from the home, as well as 2 or 3 people on the road to, ensure that all this material reaching at the right time. And we got a permission, and we spoke with the police department, and police department agreed to help us. So they were with us from the very beginning to take us where the support required. We moved out on the road. We had hardly any money. We mobilized around 1,000 ration kits on the day 1. And with that, we also told the police, we have 100 ration kits, what is to be done? Police said the most important needy people are the sex workers. So immediately we went to the Budwarpet and provided that 100. And then we started, relating and connecting to various, CSRs and people. And I would suggest is that I'm very grateful to most of the CSRs in Pune. Whenever we faced, a lack of, material, I think one or other CSR automatically came in. I believe in that Kushu said that, if really there is a need, and if there is something we have a strong willpower to do, money will come. I tell you that for the last 3 months, we distributed 18,000 family kit, different migrants and families in Pune and some outside the Pune. And we did not ask, a single paise to anybody. Everybody called us, we will contribute this, we contribute to this. So that kept on moving and moving. And then, and maybe the mid-April, we get a lot of volunteers also supporting us. We did a different strategy as we were, mobilizing, there was, usually people will go to the bigger vendors for procurement. What we did, we identified various small Kirana Dukan, where women's group, we asked them to, you give us the material so that some money going to them also, rather than going to a bigger vendor. And so we reached out. In fact, we could help around another 100 small businesses during this procurement itself. Maybe somebody used to procure, rava for us. Somebody used to procure some other materials for us. Somebody used to procure. So we tried to reach out to maximum women's group, especially the Bachat Gat in Pune city, and they mobilized the materials, and then we put it in packet, and they also got some money, and we then reached to the materials at different places. As far as we are, we have good network with colleges as well as with the various institutions and organizations. So volunteers used to, whenever we appeal, I mean, the volunteer mobilization is never, because during our own normal working days, we get almost 10 to 15 volunteers with the CYD, and through them, many volunteers start coming. But this COVID is a kind of a case, there was a scary feeling in everybody. Yes. So, people are unwilling to come in the beginning, but now there are a lot of volunteers are supporting us when we see that kind of a thing. To go ahead, I mean, we started with the most vulnerable communities like sex workers, third genders, and slowly we moved it to migrants.
But just a question, Matthew, before that. So what were your challenges when you, like one was getting the youth to be on the ground could have been a challenge. Were there other challenges that you faced while working in the distribution of food or reaching out to people?
The major challenge, there was less supply and more demand. And we couldn't ourselves cannot determine whom to give. If you go with 100 kids, there are 500 people waiting. So that was one of the big challenge we used to face. But then finally we have somebody who is from the local places or police, then we have a list of people to be distributed. So we compromise that and only provide to the people whom we have a list, or then we manage. So even today, there is the food is a major crisis, because women have not been going for, especially the domestic, many communities where women who are doing the housemaid or a domestic work, they are not out. And those families are really struggling, and there's a huge demand. Daily, I get around 5 to 6 calls from different slum communities and people, and they are, a feeling of starving. But we then go and we verify and we try to reach maximum people there. As we continue with the ration kit, the shock we had was the mid-May, sometime in 13, 14 and 15th of exodus of migrants walking. I don't know, that was something which shaken me too much, and I even nightmares. I could see thousands of migrants from Pune through Nagar Road, walking through Wakoli, through, walking towards. And how do we do that? And I mean, we used to ask them, where are you going? We are going to Chapra. Where are you going? We are walking to Raipur. Where are you going? We are walking to Bilaspur. I could imagine, because I have gone to all these places, how long. I asked them how long it will take. It may take 1 month, 2 months, but we don't want to die here. Then why don't you step back? No, I mean, we just want to go and be there. I mean, continue walking. And the reflection came to my mind to the 3 days, that is 14, 15, 16, was just like, I was seeing the pictures of partition, people carrying big, luggage on the head and children on the shoulder and walking, 40s and 40 people, 50 people, 60 people walking together towards, unknown place, that is a kind of, and that immediately we arranged, we were happy that we could connect to Gurudwara. They used to provide food and we used to pack it and immediately rush to them. We called Supa, which is just 20 kilometers away from Nagar, and also Shirur. Wherever we had a contact, we told them to stop the people moving ahead. And Supa could stop 4,000 people there. And they stopped them there and then fed them. And then they arranged buses and trains from Nagar and taken them. I take them there. We stopped many people at Lonikan. We stopped them at Waholi. We stopped them at there. And we in the night, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we used to see them walking, and we say, you stay here, wait here on the just show. We'll come in the morning. And there are many people, we take them to the shelter. We then arrange their travel and we move with them. One thing which is very shocking, and we couldn't see that how many, migrants are here. Where are their records? How are they? There is, and also there is a lot of distrust and frustration in them, and they feel that 1 month, 2 months we suffered. We don't know how long we need to wait here. And then they were started. And one shocking incident, and those one group went walking till Varda. When at Varda, one person died. And then immediately we contacted people in Varda, and they were taken to the hospital, and there was a doubt whether the remaining around 14 people in the group, and they were quarantined because there was a fear whether the person who dead is positive or not.
But Matthew, you've
and then immediately they push it.
So Matthew, you've so beautifully shown how collaboration has worked in this, because you all collaborated with a lot of people together and organizations. Kushu, what about y'all? I know Seva Kitchen has done wonderful work during the entire COVID times, and we want to hear about how has it been for y'all, and what have been the challenges for y'all.
Well, honestly speaking, I started working very early, because sitting in office, we used to get this news that sooner or later it is going to hit India. So I started very small with masks and sanitizers for the police staff on the roads somewhere near the 21st. And on the 22nd or 23rd, when I saw, that there is going to be a lockdown, and hello?
Yes, Kushu, we can hear you.
Yeah, so there is going to be a lockdown and how people are going to be affected. The first thoughts I started getting were coolies on my own railway station, then the auto walas, then the maids, and so on. So what I did was, we immediately started a campaign on of kits on Donate Card. If you've heard of the website Donate Card. So Donate Card gives in kind, and that is what we need. So we started a campaign on Donate Card of very good kits. Each kit costed about 660 rupees, which had atta, which had rice, dal, oil, sugar, and basic things which would help a family for at least 12-13 days. So we started crowdsourcing those kits, and as soon as the build-up started, people started buying those kits. The strategy I decided was very simple. I kept my heart and the doors of my house open, and I spread the word on Facebook that whichever NGO wishes to come and take kits and distribute it, I'm ready to share it. So the first two NGOs came were the Sant Nirankari Seva Dal and the Sant Nirankari Foundation. Now this group has a very good network across the country. Let me tell you that they work very hard. They are very committed volunteers. So they had a very good group in Nagpur. So what we did was, first we asked them to make lists in the locations where they are making of the people who needed kits. And not only that, we told them that please tell these communities, assure them that we will support them for the entire lockdown. Not just giving up a kit one day and vanishing from there after clicking 10 pictures. We said we will support them till the lockdown is over. And that is what we did. We had 350 bricklane workers from Chhattisgarh who come in these summer months to break bricks in Nagpur. We supported the entire community of 350 families in Nagpur. So you'll be surprised, we not only got in kind through the kits, but there were individuals who were giving us tons of rice, dal, which we again gave to community kitchens in Nagpur, who were making food and serving.
That's really wonderful. I'm just seeing that, both of y'all have managed to mobilize people at the ground level, because you all have been working at the ground level yourself, and collaborated. I think this is anyways the buzzword today, collaboration work.
I was least, but people told me, "हम आपका banner लगाए और ये करें." I said, "नहीं, there's no need for banner. We need to reach out to people. We need to help people."
So and very few people are that way. And I can see both of you are not at all who are there just for the name. But I want to ask you one thing, Khushru and Matthew, if you would like to, that how do you think our society can play a role in this today? I mean, I know you all have mobilized people, you all are already playing a role. But, seeing the extent of our country, how do you think our civil society can play a role in this? With the migrant workers issue, with COVID still there, it's still there in front of us.
It's there. And as Matthew rightly said, the need is now more. The need has grown more, because now we get so many calls, as he rightly said, 5-6 calls, but the need has increased. People have lost their jobs. Yesterday I got a call from 3 nurses in a very big hospital near my house. They have been asked to come every 3 days. They are not getting their salaries, full salaries. They are reaching out. They need help. They need kits. They need food. And yes, society, yes, there have been good points. There have been bad points. There have been bad points where I've been really disgusted. The page 3 crowd, I was shocked when people from the page 3 crowd of Nagpur asked me for kits for their maids.
Yeah, that's so really shocking.
Absolutely. This is so shocking, where they say, we have a maid, please can you send us a kit for our maid?
Absolutely.
And after remaining silent to 2-3 people, I lost my top. And you know how Parsis lose their top. So I give it to them left, right and center.
There are a lot here, so I won't comment.
So I told them, this is utter nonsense. I said, it is your responsibility to take care of them. How can you expect? You can't afford them to give them 1,000. They work for you all day long. And you can't give them a kit.
And they have been... I can feel your passion coming out in your voice. Honestly, the agitation or the irritation and the anguish you must have felt.
Definitely.
Matthew, what about you? What do you feel really society? What sort of a role?
I think society can do a lot now and also earlier. I echo what Khushru said. I'm not branding or I'm not blaming, but I'm just sharing my experiences.
Absolutely.
I had to give 2-3 kits to people employed in Zomato. While Zomato is saying that we distributed 6,000, 7,000 kits to people. I have to give 2-3 kits to people who employed in Reliance Fresh. Whereas Reliance Fresh is also, I have to, enormous number of construction workers I know there are the contractors of construction workers ask their people to call me so that they get the kits. So I do echo what Khushru has said. The people could have afforded to give, ration support to them. They have not given. I'm telling there are small examples I said. The second is that even today, there are many housemates. Imagine, Pune has around more than 30,000 auto rickshaw drivers, living on daily what they get. Imagine for 3 months, they don't have anything. Let us not even, there are poorer than those people, we are the cab drivers, the daily wage earners, there are a huge number. How can they survive for the 3 months? Now, Absolutely. We started with the most vulnerable, that is sex workers and the kinna. Then we moved to migrant. Today, we are getting lot of calls from the daily wage earners. That is the slum dwellers, the auto drivers, the band, the marriage time, those people who, come for, dancers. So those people who rely on, for example, this is a marriage season, those people who rely on this seasonal work, there. In fact, I distributed around 150, marriage band, players, they're kind of, see, we need to really understand who are the most vulnerable and we have to reach them for three months. So what society still can do, which I am trying to do now, look at Yerwada. Yerwada has around 22,000 slum dwellers, the Yerwada settlement, slum settlement. Most around 5,000 housemates. They work in, Kalyani Nagar, they work in Kuragampur, they work in nearby areas. Can we start engaging them? Can we come out of little fear of, why these people come and contaminate or infect? So infection anybody can, get infected. We are now trying to assure them, we will test every domestic worker, ensure that they are negative. Please start accepting those people so that they start earning. See, most of the people in this slum, they all are daily wage earners. Maybe somebody is working in a retail shop, somebody is working in a garage, somebody is working housemaid. So their entire 3 people's earning is affected. So I think we need to really look into these, casual workers, informal sector, and they are mostly in trouble today. I think I am telling you, I have calls coming from police, I have calls coming from journalists, I have calls coming from reporters. Matthew, help them.
That's really,
so
really
everybody
wonderful.
is in the
And so heartwarming. Honestly, Matthew and Khushru, I'm honestly really touched. I think with the interest of time, I know some of our SVP members here will have some questions. So I'm going to open it out for questions.
Excuse me.
Yes, of course. Please, Khushru. Yes.
Before I open up, I'll share a small poem with all of you.
Yes.
It's in Hindi. And I always share it at Seva Kitchen talks whenever I speak, though I don't speak much. And this poem is so apt in today's times. It says, प्रभु कहते हैं, होती आरती बजते शंख. प्रभु कहते हैं, होती आरती बजते शंख, पूजा में सब खोए हैं. मंदिर के बाहर तो देखो, भूखे बच्चे सोए हैं. एक निवाला उनको देना, प्रसाद मुझे चढ़ जाएगा. मेरे दर पर मांगने वाले, तुझे बिन मांगे सब मिल जाएगा.
How beautiful, how beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Khushru. And what a beautiful message Seva Kitchen has, honestly.
Thank you.
So Parul, we could open it out for questions.
Yes. We have one question here in the chat box. It's Tanu's answered. I'm assuming it's Tanu auntie for sure. I don't know. It says, wonderful that you cooked for 200 meals for families of patients on Sundays, but what about other 6 days?
Yes. Now what we have done is a right question. Now what happened is, when we started with Sundays, we started getting people from corporates also who said that we will feed for 1 day. Can you give us a day? So we have hospitals in Nagpur where we started with 1 day. A biggest cancer hospital in Nagpur. Now we have lunch and dinners over there completely. Then we have cancer hospices where we have individuals who are serving lunch and dinner. So we break up the entire week where somebody picks up lunch, somebody picks up dinner, somebody picks up breakfast. They cook and it is their duty. So we've given them the hospital where I saved, where I started serving, where my mother was admitted. So we used to cook food on every Sunday. Now we've been kicked out of there. We only served for a year. Now it's almost 5 years where 5 different families have picked up, and first Sunday, second Sunday, third Sunday, fourth Sunday, fifth Sunday. And they cook on those particular days, and we're not allowed in that hospital other days because there is a canteen over there. So there's a contract over there. So likewise, in other hospitals, we are there where we serve for 3 days in a week, 4 days in a week. So as we get ready volunteers, so they can be corporates or they can be anything, we just attach them. We just, what do we say? We just connect the dots. That's it.
Thank
and of course, our Neki Ka Pitara is there where we serve 365 days a year.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful and very different initiative.
Yes.
Rati, you had a question.
Yeah, there is the next question. I'll just read that out. The next question says, it's for Matthew. Matthew, how can we in Puneites, how can we Puneites help? Many of us have contributed for rations. What more can we do in a more organized, structured manner? Khushru, there's a question to you. It says, Khushru, what's the starting point for a Seva kitchen? How can a city start?
Yeah. See, we are now going beyond ration kits. Of course, we continue providing ration kit because that is a need. Now we are identifying the containment zones, and we have now started infection control, providing sodium hypochlorite spraying everywhere so that there is no spreading happen, break the chain. We are also helping the hospitals to manage biomedical waste and see what can be done. We are working very closely with PMC. We have identified 11 hospitals, and now with the support of UNICEF, we are moving towards that to ensure adequate facilities are there. We are also getting into, especially the slums, the community toilet. So community toilet also can be a place for, infection, because more than 200, 300 people use the community toilet, and we are also looking into the disinfection and also ensuring adequate facilities and seats are there. Now we have started oximeter checking, especially going to the households and see if there are people above 55, 60 years. We check their oxygen level, and today itself in Yerwada, we identified around 4 or 5 people's oxygen level is low. Immediately we refer to them, the hospitals, and move so that further spread is not happening in the area. And also, I think that the whole entire migrant issue, I think there's a lot to do at the health level, at the livelihood level, at the food or daily, requirement level. I think many aspects it is required. But one thing which has surprised me during my last maybe 1 or 2 months, I think industries also have a role to play. I feel that, we would not have been in this situation. I think every industry, especially when they subcontract and then subcontract, how they behave with their laborers need to be taken care of. We cannot keep away from that. I have seen, even today, I get to call from 5, 6 groups from Jharkhand. They are still here because they didn't get their wages. There are thousands of workers have left the place without getting their wages, without any money. I've seen people crying at Lonikand and asking me, I have no money to travel by truck even. Immediately we used to pull out 500 rupees and give it to them. You go by truck. We have an accountability in the industry when we engage the contractors and subcontractors. How do they behave to the laborers? Whether it is a real estate, whether it is any industry, a minimum to ensure that, okay, our money reaching to the laborers adequately. I think that aspect we really need to take up now. Maybe their ESI registration, maybe they should get some, benefit in other way, or they should get their legitimate wages on time.
Yes.
I think that aspect somewhere, I don't know, the procurement groups of the industry, maybe HR department of the industry, who is engaging the contractors and the subcontractors. What are the policies of those people? Otherwise, these laborers will continue to suffer. Because migrants are coming. Now we are also constantly touching with the migrants in Jharkhand, migrants in Chhattisgarh, because we have their telephone. Where are you? And we find 2 kinds of people. One kind of people, they want to come back. One kind of people who have worked and suffered and received police lathi charge, and they are in shock till, and they don't want to come back. At least I'm sure that maybe 30-40% of the people who have gone back can be brought back. Can we make a steps towards that? How can we bring back? We can help. I have a database of 3,000 migrants. If they're called, they're kind.
And you're right, Matthew. And I think a lot of us on this platform, probably coming from our spaces of work, I think it's really nice that you've sort of, thrown some light on that it gives us a chance to reflect back on a lot of things. Khushru, one question for you from Rati was that how can we start Seva Kitchen? How can a city start that?
Yeah. So see, basically we initially we encountered a problem with government hospitals, serving in government hospitals, because they didn't allow us. So more, we tried in Sassoon Hospital, and you'll be surprised, we have two groups in Pune which are already serving. So what we did was, and initially when the groups start, they are very skeptical of going to hospitals, of how we will go there and all these problems. So we started an initiative which was very small, and it was a monthly initiative, which is called Jars of Kindness. So Jars of Kindness is, if all women out here, you have cooked cookies and biscuits and bhakra and what all for your children, and you have these jars filled up in your kitchen, and your mothers maybe at one time have sent you these things. So these things are, we realized that orphanages, old age homes needed this love. So what we did was, we made a group where the group, once a month, they would make these snacks at their place and fill it up in jars, collect it at one location, and then it would be given to an orphanage or old age home to spread the love over there. So we started with that, and slowly these groups then themselves, they saw the other initiatives like Seva Tiffin or Nikki Ka Pitara, and then they would think of starting it. So we start small at every location and then help it grow. So if you want to start a Nikki Ka Pitara in your city, you can think of a location which really has needy patients. So mostly, I would say, though we have one government hospital in Nagpur where we have installed a Nikki Ka Pitara, what I believe is every fill of the Nikki Ka Pitara is worth 6,000 to 7,000 rupees. So every month, at least 2 lakhs worth of material comes into the Nikki Ka Pitara. So there has to be a lot of transparency from the hospital side. So we think of trust-run hospitals where there is a lot of transparency, like Satya Sai Hospital.
Absolutely.
Blindly we started over there. There are these cancer hospices like Karun Ashray in Bangalore, Snehanchal, again run by a Parsi in Nagpur, Snehanchal Palliative Care Center. So these locations have complete transparency. So
absolutely. And I think so a lot of us on the group, I know by the messages that we are inspired and probably would want to explore that, and maybe we will ask Parul to sort of maybe take if any of the SPP partners sort of want to contribute and start something at a personal level.
So in Pune we have Rescue Foundation, which basically rescues girls from trafficking. So we've been serving there. In Bombay we have both these locations where they have. So we started with, they came to know about us and they said about 40 girls were being sent from Pune, being rehabilitated in Kolkata, Nepal and all these. So would you give them lunch and dinner in Nagpur? So we started small with them, and now every month our teams give them snacks. Then they started asking, we need bed sheets, we need slippers, we need this, we need that. And then the groups get involved with these organizations, and always in kind, no money.
Yeah, that's
I have another question.
Platform. Yes.
Sorry, I have another question from Meher that says, Matthew and Khushro, truly inspiring. Wanted to know about rations, money and help from the government. Have you seen any help coming from there? Whether rations, money, funds for micro enterprises, entrepreneurs, etc.
Though I never went for any funding or anything to the government, though the Chief Minister had called me and said, we are ready to do anything for you. But let me tell you, I have come across cases where, they said the Food Corporation of India was giving rice and wheat, but there was some problem in the this to get those material from. So NGOs it was better for them to get from donors rather than going to the government and getting. This was what was told to me from others. I have not experienced it first time.
The first month it was a bit disappointing. Probably the government was busy with COVID medical issues and did not look into the social and other aspects of it. So there was no good response coming from them. even if government provided ration, they only provided rice and wheat, and that is not sufficient enough. They need oil, they need other many other items. So therefore, there is, though we are under the impression that okay, government is giving what they are giving, they are not giving a kit. They are giving a maybe just a rice and wheat, nothing more than that. I think therefore there is a role for us to give, and I agree with that. In fact, I procured around 3,000 kg or tons of rice from FCI because we have the legal requirement of Society Registration Act, but I didn't found that rice was good. Then immediately we stopped it. So after serving those kind of, because I felt if we are providing, we need to give good quality rice to them. So,
somebody told me that politicians were taking this rice, making food, putting their leaflets on them, and distributing in trains. I was on the station also. I served on the station for a week because I, being from the railways, I got a call from my boss, and thanks to Amita, who organized 700 boxes of biscuits for us. So she and her friends, and she also organized chas, buttermilk, 350 ml buttermilks, which we did about 20,000 packets from them. Amita and a friend from Bombay who gave us 1 lakh packets, but we were not able to distribute 1 lakh packets in the days we had. So the condition was pathetic. Frankly speaking, the conditions of the people traveling in trains also was pathetic. It was really bad.
Absolutely.
I must add to this. Amita also sent biscuits to Matthew with CYDA.
Yeah.
So we had lots of biscuits, almost 25 boxes.
Boxes of biscuits. We get? Parle-G.
Yeah, yes, 25 Parle-G. Yeah,
and she was always like, take more biscuits, Khushru, as many biscuits. I told her, bhai, mere ghar mein bhi to rakhne ki jagah ho na.
So I had one question.
That has helped us to include around 5 to 6 packets of biscuit in every ration.
Every kit, yes.
Yeah. I have one question to Khushru especially. You started Indian Blood Donors way back when online was not really a big thing. It was very, there was hardly any crowdfunding, etc. But you started that then. And then you've successfully done Seva Kitchens. How have you managed to use this online platform so well when there are so many marketing guys who are failing to use it? Like, how have you succeeded so brilliantly well using it? And how do you really use it? You please explain that.
I started Indian Blood Donors in 1999.
Yeah.
Okay. 2000 I started. We started building on 1999 because I saw a patient die in hospital when my grandmother was in hospital in 94. That lady from a village died for want of blood. And so I started working on it in 1999, 2000. I never knew what a website was. 2000, I used my own resources, my Provident Fund, and we set up Indian Blood Donors. And in 2001, I had no money to continue with Indian Blood Donors. So 2001, the Gujarat earthquake happened, and suddenly we got noticed. BBC World did a story on us. And a few corporates came up to me and told me that Khushru will support you, but with conditions. So that is the reason now you'll know the reason why I did not start an NGO, why I don't take money. So they gave me this long list of things, and one NGO finally decided, and the last moment he tells me, I don't need anything from you. I only need your list of blood donors and their mobile numbers. I said, what for, sir? He said, we will, exploit them commercially to sell our products. So I said, I'm sorry, sir, I will not do that. And, he uttered a sentence. He told me, Mr. Pocha, you cannot do good work without money. I don't know what came over me. And the next sentence which I told him, I said, sir, I will prove to you and to the world that I will do good work without accepting money. And that was it. I have faced many challenges. In 2005, the business schools like IIM Ahmedabad, my mentor is from IIM Ahmedabad, Professor Anil Gupta. And he called me to speak to the students out there. And the students literally threw me out. He said, you cannot succeed without a revenue model. Indian blood donors cannot work without a revenue model. And it's 20 years now that we are still there. We proved everybody wrong. Basically, what I have done is, what I should tell you, it's just passion which drives me. And I feel where there is a will, there is a way. And if there is integrity, if there is integrity, if there is selfless seva, everybody will come up to help you. Today, everything what we are doing is contribution by the people. They take charge of it, and they run the initiative. So it's basically passion, completely passion.
And that we can see, Matthew,
I remember
and Khushru, totally. The passion that is just, I think it's overwhelming for all of us on this chat today. Parul, I'll hand it over to you for the formal thank yous.
Yeah, sure. I remember I read somewhere for Khushru's interview saying Parsi ko challenge nahi karna chahiye. I actually read that. It's written somewhere in one of the things while I was researching.
Yes.
I'd like to end. With that, I'd like to end this session. I am sure it's been quite inspiring for everybody out here, as much as it's been for me. Somebody who wishes to work in this sector, wishes to learn more in this sector and do good. Anybody has a comment, we still have 2 minutes, we can open it. Else, I would like to say thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Khushru. And Matthew and Khushru, I'll be in touch with you and would like to keep working with you. And I will also speak to our SVP partners, and if anybody wishes to link up with you, because I did have a question on the chat saying, can we get links to how to make donations, etc. So so both of you please do send it, and I will be in touch. And thank you so much for the work that you do. It's because of people like you that the government can still continue the way they are, and people like us can still live happily the way we are. And thank you.
I am
That's
also
about it.
So we are also very
Please.
grateful. I am very thankful to Reddy Pops because she has been very beginning of the CYDA. I would say that a silent mentor. Helping us and supporting us. And I would like to say that I cannot name it. I really got a lot of support from CSRs from Pune, whether it's a Persistent Foundation, whether it's Eaton Foundation, whether it is a Tata Motors. So I never requested, we just sent an email, they say we are coming to you and supporting you. And I think industries really came forward beyond their, beyond their capacity. Recently, I was struggling. I wanted to have another, 1,000 kits to be distributed, and immediately I got it from Persistent. So there is all CSRs are very supportive for the COVID. Therefore, I fear what after COVID, how the CSRs will be able to sustain the developmental work in the various places. And I'm really grateful to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everybody.
Thanks everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.